The Man with No Face. I grew up in the kind of Appalachian town where everyone knows each other's names and superstitions are passed down like family heirlooms. Stories of ghosts, witches, and beasts that roamed the hills were told to kids like bedtime tales. One legend in particular always got under my skin: the Man with No Face. They said he haunted Devil's Ridge, a forgotten trail nestled in thick woods outside town. People claimed he was a spirit of someone who was buried without proper rites, his face erased as punishment for his sins. I thought it was just folklore, until I saw him myself. I was 17. My best friend Chris and I had the brilliant idea to camp at Devil's Ridge one fall weekend. We packed our gear and hiked up late afternoon, determined to prove how fearless we were. By dusk, we'd set up a tent near a clearing and started a small fire. The trees loomed like dark sentinels around us, and the silence was unnerving. Around 2 a.m. I woke up. Not from a noise, more like a pressure, a sense that something wasn't right. Chris was still asleep. I unzipped the tent as quietly as I could and peeked out. That's when I saw him. 30 feet away, between two pines, was a tall figure. He wore a long, weathered coat and a wide-brimmed hat that cast his head in shadow. I squinted through the darkness and lifted my flashlight. The beam landed on his face, or what should have been a face. There was nothing. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched where human features should be. I gasped and stumbled back into the tent, shaking Chris awake like a madman. He groaned but snapped awake when he saw my expression. We both peeked out, and he was gone. We waited till sunrise before moving. We didn't talk much on the way back. It wasn't until we got to Chris's house that we noticed the slashes, 3 long, jagged cuts across the back of his jacket. Neither of us remembered him falling or brushing against anything. Years later, Chris refuses to talk about it. I still hike, but never near Devil's Ridge. And if I ever do, I make damn sure I never go alone. The Screaming Hollow. In 2020, I took a short-term job as a seasonal park ranger in the Smoky Mountains region. Most of the job was uneventful, checking trail conditions, updating signage, helping the occasional lost hiker. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was decent and the views unbeatable. I was stationed near a section called Hollow Creek, but the locals had another name for it: Screaming Hollow. I laughed the first time I heard it. The old-timers said people who wandered too deep into the hollow would hear screams, sometimes from miles away, sometimes right behind them. Of course, none of this was on the official maps or brochures. One night, I found out why. It was late October, the last week of my contract. I'd gone out alone to check a fallen tree reported near the edge of Hollow Creek. The trail was damp from recent rain and cloaked in fog. I remember the smell of moss and wet leaves. Then I heard it. A scream, high-pitched and frantic. It cut through the air like a siren. My first thought was that someone was injured. I grabbed my radio. No signal. I started heading toward the sound, calling out, "Ranger! Are you okay? Can you hear me?" The screaming grew louder, but weirdly distant. It didn't move like a person. It moved in circles, like it was bouncing around the trees, impossible to pinpoint. Then the voice changed. It dropped in pitch, like it was trying to mimic the scream, but failing. It turned guttural, animalistic. Not a coyote, not a bear, something else. That's when I saw it. About 50 feet ahead was a figure, hunched over, swaying. It was naked and pale, skin stretched tight over bones. Its arms were too long, almost dragging. The head snapped toward me, and I saw its mouth, wide, hollow, and stretched far past anything human. It let out the same distorted scream, but now it was layered, like it was mimicking multiple people at once. I don't remember turning around, I just remember running. When I reached the service road, my radio crackled back to life. I told my supervisor what happened. He listened, nodded, and simply said, "You shouldn't have gone in there alone." Later, I asked the oldest ranger about it. He wouldn't say much, just, "Some places aren't meant to be patrolled."
The cabin that wasn't there.
In the summer of 2019, My cousin Sam and I set out to hike a section of the Appalachian Trail in West Virginia. It was supposed to be a 3-day no-frills adventure. Sam was an experienced outdoorsman. I was tagging along mostly to disconnect. The first day went fine. The forest was dense but beautiful, with towering oaks and soft trails. We pitched camp by a stream, made a small fire and shared some stories. Typical stuff. The second night, everything changed. A sudden storm hit while we were halfway up a ridge. The wind howled. Rain came down in sheets. We were soaked, and our tent had blown off the trail. That's when Sam spotted it. Through the trees, maybe 100 yards downhill. A cabin. It looked old but sturdy. No lights, but there was smoke coming from the chimney. Relieved, we ran to it. The door creaked open with a light push. Inside, it was strangely warm. The fireplace glowed with fresh embers. On the table were 2 ceramic mugs. A wool blanket lay folded neatly on a chair. But there was no one home. We called out. Nothing. No phone. No photos. Just a wooden interior that looked like something out of the 1930s. We figured maybe the owner was out hunting or had gone into town. We left a note on the table and fell asleep on the floor, exhausted. At around 2:47 a.m., I woke to dragging sounds, slow, deliberate from the floor above. I nudged Sam. We both listened. Then came footsteps, heavy, measured. Then, the front door creaked, slowly, open. We sat up. The door was wide open, rain pouring in. But what chilled me were the footprints, muddy, bare footprints. They came in, but there were none going out. I whispered for Sam to run. We grabbed our gear and sprinted into the woods, barely able to see. It wasn't until daylight that we found the trail again. Curious and confused, we went back to the spot later with a ranger we flagged down. But there was nothing. No cabin, no chimney, just trees. The ranger looked us dead in the eye and said, "You two aren't the first to see it. That cabin shows up when storms hit, and those who stay don't always make it back."